Hello, today is Saturday, October 27th, and we're interviewing Fran Daniels. Miss Daniels, um, let's see, welcome.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you very much for
Mhm.
participating.
Oh, thank you. It's indeed an honor to share some stories that I've heard over the years in regards to East Cleveland. You know, I was not raised on this side of town, but my dad did work on this side of town when I was very, very young, you know.
Okay. Now, Miss Daniels, are you single, married, divorced?
I'm a widow. Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
single.
Oh, okay. Do you have any children?
I have one son and five beautiful grandchildren.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Okay, now, Miss Daniels, um, you mentioned that your father was a part of the city of East Cleveland. In what way was he here in the city of East Cleveland?
Well, when I was very, very young, I remember just a little bit about it. It must have been maybe 3, 4, maybe even 5 years old, but they used to talk all the time. And my father was the first black mechanic for the Cleveland Transit System. It's now called RTA. And I remember him sharing with us the stories that when he first started working in East Cleveland, that the police stopped him and they took him back to CTS to confirm that he did work there. So evidently there were not a lot of African Americans coming through East Cleveland at that time.
Okay, can
So
you tell me about what time frame? Was it
I would
1950s?
imagine it was in the late 40s, maybe 1948, 49, something like that. I imagine it would be something. And everyone in the family has passed on now, so I'm not sure the exact year, but I know I was very young.
Okay, what was your father's first and last name?
His name was Lee McLin.
Me, McLean.
McLin. They called him the Black Irishman.
Ah, okay. And how did your father come about this position with CTS?
Well, I'm not sure, but I know he was a ace mechanic because I can remember as I got older, he could listen to a car and tell you what was wrong with it. So I imagine that I don't know if he had any formal training or what have you at that time. I guess during the 40s, you more or less worked under someone and learned the trade. So he must have been very good. As I said, he was the first black mechanic they had. So he probably had to be very, very good to secure that job.
Okay, so you say that perhaps he was up under a apprenticeship?
Well, I think as an auto mechanic, he was under apprenticeship because in those days that they didn't have Max Hayes, they didn't have any schools for automotive, so he probably had to. I'm just guessing. He probably had to work under a senior mechanic to learn about motors and things like that. And bus motors, I don't know how he came about that, but maybe he was just willing to learn. He was a very smart man, very smart. Yeah.
Okay, and how many years was he with CTS?
I'm not sure. I would imagine. Hmm, I'm not sure. I would imagine he was there maybe 5 or 6 years because then he went to work for a Federal Reserve Bank. Yeah.
Okay, now while he was working um, at the station, did you ever have the opportunity to come into the area or to come to his place of employment?
Oh, interesting. You should ask that. I remember one incident. Um, we went to CTS. We were there with the buses, and my father took me up on a bus and sat behind the wheel, and I got scared and I started crying. So I remember, I guess all the apparatus and the instruments that were on the dashboard really frightened me as a young child. So I do remember crying, so he brought me off the bus.
Okay, very good. Now, with your dad, with that particular incident that you mentioned earlier with the police officers, was that a one-time situation, or did the police officers question his presence in the city more than once?
As I remember, I'm sure it was more than once because I remember him talking about it, and he says that it took him weeks to realize that he did work there and that he was legitimate and he wasn't there for any ill purpose or what have you. You know, so I don't know how long it was, but he said weeks. You know.
Now, with the city of East Cleveland, or just the situation itself, do you have any other dealings with the city of East Cleveland?
Well, I am a realtor, and I have a couple listings in East Cleveland, and it's been a little difficult to market them on, I would say, the north side of Terrace Road. The upper part of East Cleveland, where they have those real nice houses, it's very easy to market those homes, but I have a couple listings on the, I guess would that be the north side? No, it would be on the west side, I guess, of Terrace Road. And it appears that East Cleveland now has a little stigma. And when you say East Cleveland, people automatically think that it's like a slum area, a high crime area, and anything negative they can think of. But I believe East Cleveland is coming back. If you ride down Euclid, there are a lot of businesses, nice businesses, big businesses. And it looks clean and it looks safe. But it's hard to convince people that East Cleveland, I believe, is changing.
Okay, now why do you think that is so?
Well, one reason I think Cleveland Clinic is coming on the borders of East Cleveland, and they're building those very expensive condos, and I'm sure building those type of condos that the rest of the area has to come up to par in order to market those condos because they're not, cheap. So, anybody that wants to or does spend X amount of dollars for a nice condo, they want a nice surroundings, a nice environment. And it appears that that's what is happening on parts of Euclid Avenue in East Cleveland.
Okay, now you speak of a stigma about East Cleveland. What do you think is the major cause of that particular stigmatism of the city?
Well, I think years ago, or a few years ago, the crime rate appeared to be a little higher, a little more dramatic years ago. But I don't think, I'm not sure, but I don't think it's as bad as it was a few years ago. And then there was a heavy drug problem at one time in East Cleveland. But in following the news, they've enlisted, I think, the Sheriff's Department and other law enforcement agencies, and I think they've kind of cleaned it up because you don't see any kind of that activity, or at least I haven't seen any kind of that activity on Euclid Avenue, whereas at one time you would see people like standing on the corner, which would indicate to me that they were up to no good. I don't know, but that's the way I would perceive it. So I don't see that type of activity anymore, Not saying it's not there, but it's not visible. And I think for that reason, East Cleveland is beginning to turn around. And they have the most phenomenal houses in East Cleveland. These big mansions, they were built by very wealthy people back in the day, and they still have character. They have that beautiful wood, and most people haven't seen a house that has 2 living rooms. And these houses are just awesome. And I would love to see these houses renovated and just sectioned off and made just a viable community. I'd love to see that.
Okay. Yeah. So as a realtor, how would you convince a client to come in and take a look at these homes?
Well, I would talk more about the house.
Okay. When I asked that question, with the stigma that you stated, okay, and the stigmatism coming from the news possibly, or perhaps former residents or such, could you indicate where the stigmatism could be coming? And also, how would you counter that if you had a client who said, you said to them, I want you to come in and take a look at this beautiful house in the city of East Cleveland. So how would you convince them to take the tour? Well,
I would convince them, I would make every effort to convince them that East Cleveland was changing. And I would suggest that they drive down Euclid in certain areas and begin to feel comfortable with the area. I would also tell them about Cleveland Clinic coming forth and coming up Euclid And I said that would give you more police protection because Cleveland Clinic has its own police force. So along with the East Cleveland Police, they might feel more comfortable if they knew that the law enforcement agencies were readily available, that there was enough to handle situations, you know. And I would share with them the shopping centers like at Euclid and Superior. You can get almost anything in that area. You know, I would just kind of try to convince them to visit East Cleveland, visit some of the churches, visit some of the businesses, and then I showed them some of the houses and how all of this was going to change and become a wonderful, beautiful community, and they could be the first ones to do it, or in the beginning stages of this rehabilitation.
Okay. Now, as a realtor, do you see or have you encountered any type of social injustices in the marketing of East Cleveland?
Not really. Very interesting enough. I think when the original homeowners kind of left East Cleveland, they rented their places out, and usually to individuals who were on government subsidy programs, you know, which is all right, but a lot of times that they weren't in the mindset of keeping the property up, you know, and taking care of the grass, and the homeowners just let it go down. You know, they didn't make sure the grass was cut. They didn't make sure that people weren't hanging out in their property, and things they could have done to help the area stay up. They just ran, you know, and if they paid fine, and by them getting government assistance, they were getting their checks in the mail. So they never really had to come down back to the original rental property to make sure everything was in order. And I do blame the homeowners for not staying on top of the property. If they'd stayed on top of the property, I don't believe that East Cleveland would have to make such a dramatic comeback as it does now.
Okay, Ms. Daniels, as a realtor, are there any inequalities or inequities in marketing the city of East Cleveland that you can think of?
Well, I believe it's much better now. A few years ago, one of the pitfalls of buying property in East Cleveland was that the water bill was so high. And I believe East Cleveland had to buy water. I don't know if they bought it from the city of Cleveland and put a big surcharge on there. But I have heard back in the day that there were people that paid at least $135 per month for a water bill. And in comparison to that would be a 3-month bill in Cleveland. So for that reason, a lot of people probably just left East Cleveland. They left very high water bills. But since Cleveland has taken over the water portion in East Cleveland, I understand it's much, much, much more reasonable. Because at one time, East Cleveland would just turn your water off. So that is another reason that there was a lot of blighted properties, because people would leave. They can't live in a house without water. So they would just leave as is, and the property would just sit there. But now I believe that is changing, and I often remind people that East Cleveland is now under, East Cleveland Water is now under Cleveland Water Department, and that the rates are much, much better. You know, they're not as high as they were a few years ago.
Okay, so with the city of East Cleveland being or next door to, not surrounded by, but next door to the city of Cleveland, you feel that it has been a help to the city of East Cleveland, or how about the institutions that surround the city of East Cleveland, Cleveland Clinic, University Circle,
right,
University Hospitals, Case Western Reserve?
I believe East Cleveland, and being on the border of Cleveland, that has a very good advantage and a very good selling point, because it's near the University Circle area. And I think everybody in the country knows that the University Circle area includes Cleveland Clinic, University Hospital, Case Western Reserve, and our world-renowned Severance Hall, our art museum. All the cultural spots seem to be around the University Circle area. And that's a big, big plus, you know. And in marketing East Cleveland, you could simply say, well, we're very near the University Circle area, and people are becoming more familiar. They've just opened the big Contemporary Art Center, which is just gorgeous. So I believe these pluses can be marketable items for East Cleveland.
Okay, so you feel that this would definitely, these things, marketing East Cleveland will help the future of East Cleveland?
Oh yes, definitely.
Okay, and I want to thank you very much for this interview.
Oh, well, I think it was indeed an honor, you know, to share the little bit that I knew, you know, but East Cleveland's a beautiful community, and I just know that it's going to come back. Yeah, it's going to come back. Oh, you know, I just thought of, I remember that my mother was a stay-at-home mom. That was back in the day. But she had a picture from a newspaper, I believe, of the mechanics at Cleveland Transit System. I think they did some kind of story or feature story on it. And I'm going to search in the attic and see if I can find that picture. I remember seeing it, you know, but if I find it, I'll be more than happy to share it with you.
Okay, great. Please give us a call back and let us know.
Okay, fine.
Okay,
Thank you. Thank you.